everybody, this is Joe. We're talking about Marvel Multiverse, and there's been a little bit of a leak on the upcoming X-Men expansion. So you may have seen this in the news that there's been a little bit of a leak on what we can expect in the expansion to the core rulebook that's coming up later this year, actually in just only a couple months from the time of recording. The X-Men expansion is really an expansion of the core rulebook. It's not really a module. It's not going to be a prepackaged adventure, even though it does have maps. So I want to show you what we kind of saw, which is basically the table of contents and my hopes for what we kind of see out of this and what things I'm excited about to integrate into my games. Most of the expansion is talking about the different teams and how we use them in game. Actually, the chapters are divided up into basically the same subsections. So we might have the X-Men and then something about the team, a map having to do with the team, opponents, locations, and tips for integrating them into your game. And then the same structure is done for X-Factor and X-Force and Mutant Class and the Marauders, etc. And so we actually see that these chapters are kind of formulaic, which is fine. That means we know how to find what we're looking for. Some of the maps are going to be actually really useful. There's going to be a map of the Blackbird. There's going to be a map of Xavier's mansion. And we can use that for all kinds of different things in our games. And I'm glad to have those things available to me. I will definitely use them. So we have every different group that we might potentially want in an X-Men themed game and maps that are going along with them. And then there are also characters. We have a lot of character sheets. And I want to talk about this for a second. There are about 70 pages of character stat blocks in this book. It's a large chunk of the book. And when I first got into running this game, I didn't want so many pre-written stat blocks for characters, heroes and villains. In fact, there's a lot of heroes. And initially I looked at this and I thought, well, my players aren't going to want to play pre-established characters. And to this day, no player in one of my games has ever wanted to, even though the choice is totally open. They haven't really wanted to do that. And so I thought that building these stats wouldn't actually be useful for those of us running the game. I was wrong. One thing I have found running games of Marvel Multiverse is that my players love it when I bring in established characters as NPCs. Not just in pre-written modules like Cataclysm of Kang, but doing this in a homebrew world, a homebrew game. I bring in these NPCs and they absolutely adore it. They love when I integrate things that they know with things that are surprises. So having these stat blocks established is great. Also, if I want to run villains, I don't have to make up stat blocks, even though I obviously enjoy doing it. I can just grab a stat block that's pre-established and drop it into my game, and it's much easier to be able to do. So having 70 pages of stat blocks is actually going to help me out a lot. There's some other things that are going to be in this book, and there's some things I really hope for with them. So let's get into these one at a time. And the first one is going to be a section on weapons. The equipment and weapons section is only 2 pages, it looks like. But what I'm really hoping for is a couple things. First of all, just something about items. We really don't have anything on items yet in this game, and it's actually been a problem once at my table. And how do we deal with items and people picking up items and using them? And also, what kind of items should we have? Having a weapons section might add a little bit to that, though I'm a little bit skeptical. Typically, when we've seen charts on weapons, it has just said what the range is, both minimum and maximum range, and what kind of damage it does, and if it can hit multiple targets. If it's just an expansion of weapons in that sense, I'm not terribly interested, but if it gives me an ability to integrate other equipment into the game, I'm actually very interested in how that goes. Next is going to be a section on vehicles, and we're going to have sections on a few specific vehicles, EVAs, the Blackbird, the Marauder, and what it takes to pilot these, what kind of abilities they have, maybe a stat block for the vehicle. Having those is going to be really useful. In my games, I start my heroes off with almost no means of transportation other than what they can cobble together, and by late game, they get the things like the Blackbird or have had spaceships or all different types of vehicles. Having some stat blocks or basic piloting rules will make running certain types of parts of an adventure easier. So I actually really am looking forward to the section on vehicles and hopefully some rules on what it takes to actually pilot and maneuver during the perhaps chase sequences. There is going to be a section on new conditions, though it seems like this is one page or less than a page, because on that same page we're going to have mental duels. I don't know what this means yet, but if it means that we're able to have some kind of combat that takes place through telepathic characters over distances, I am super on board with that and can't wait to see what that is like. So I want to know more about mental duels and what this means. Now we are going to get new origins, new traits, and new tags. Of these, new traits is the one that I think is most necessary, because in the end, origins don't really change character dynamics all that much, and my players could homebrew anything that they wanted to, but traits have mechanical advantages to them, and I find as I am building characters on this channel, I'm using the same traits a lot because some of them are just noticeably better than others outside of certain very core concept of a character archetypes. So having new traits is going to be great. We're also going to get some stuff on anti-mutant cures or mutant growth hormones, and if these are ways of altering characters and altering NPCs throughout the journey of a campaign, I can't wait to see what that looks like. The thing I am most excited about in this whole book is the thing that potentially could be the biggest letdown, and that's new powers. There are only 10 pages dedicated to new powers, and I just don't think that's enough. We don't have an enormous breadth of powers and power sets available in the core rulebook, and having a bunch of options I think will make the game more expansive and more fun, and I think that there's a lot of room for growth in the variety of things that can and should be available. So only having 10 pages is a little bit disappointing, but if they can get a lot of new things, new exciting things, new power sets, I cannot wait to explore. So if you're excited about the X-Men expansion, what are you most excited about? I think folks would love to hear. For me, it is probably powers, new powers first, and then things having to do with vehicles second. That's what I'm really excited about, but having new stat blocks and looking at all of the different groups and thinking about campaign ideas, I think is going to be really exciting to read. So anyway, this book is going to be coming out in a few months as of the time of recording. When it comes out, I'll read it, and of course I will share my thoughts, but these are just some exciting things regarding the leak that happened in the last week. All right, until next time, thanks for joining me, and I'll be seeing you.